Welcome back to Pittsburgh Postgame. Matt Gajtka here with you. What a relief, huh? The Penguins survive and get that first win of the 2020 postseason. It was not easy. It was not anywhere close to being easy against Montreal. We knew that was going to be the case for much of this series, perhaps, with Carey Price in goal. I didn't want to admit it as much because I hate that reductive, simplistic analysis, but I just have to admit, Carey Price has been really good, and the Penguins have had to scrap for everything they've gotten offensively in this series. But tonight it was about Sid and the kids. It was about Crosby being ready to go and leading the way. The first half of that game, I thought, was really remarkable in terms of the consistency of that top line, and especially with the captain in the middle, bearing that pass from Jake Guentzel. Guentzel pulling up on the boards after the Penguins create a turnover in their defensive zone. Bingo bongo, transition game was great. And it was a bit of a foreshadowing moment, wasn't it, of the clinching goal, you could call it, the goal that made it 2-0 when Conor Sheary picked off a pass, and he went off down the rink with none other than Jason Zucker in tow. Jason in the middle of a line change for the Penguins, but Zucker got a chance with Sheary, and he went right to the net, and Conor looked off Carey Price and put the puck right on his stick. So I think pretty good execution when the Penguins had their chance there late, but still having a hard time finishing, especially on that power play. I hesitate to even talk about it anymore because it has frustrated. There were a couple of power plays tonight, the first and the third, as I noted as the game went along, where Patrick Hornqvist was doing his job in front of the net. There was traffic, there were shots, but I still feel like the Penguins' power play, with the talent it has, should be able to generate more than just bombing away from the outside and hoping for a nice bounce on a rebound. It happens occasionally, but we have seen this power play work, maybe more so in the Phil Kessel days than in the post-Kessel era here in Pittsburgh. But this season, kind of mediocre, and thus far in the playoffs, just the one conversion with plenty of chances. This feels like the 2005-06 season with how many power plays are going on in not just the Penguins games, mind you, but every game. And I'm not complaining because I really enjoy seeing penalties called. I like special teams play because you see the stars more often on the ice too for both sides. It does disrupt the flow of the game if you like 5-on-5, but for me, I think there's a good trade-off there because it obviously discourages illegal play. Imagine that. So I'm not going to complain about the number of chances or how much of these games are being played on special teams, but if this is going to be the case, obviously this is a dumb analysis too, but obviously the Penguins are going to have to get better on that power play and just get more consistent. The heck of it is they're getting in the zone, which is a lot of times the hard part for a lot of teams, but they're gaining the zone pretty well with the exception of one or two opportunities in this series so far. And once they're in the zone, though, they just are unable to generate much. So a real bugaboo to start this series. And I know it's probably driving the Penguins coaches mad. It's definitely driving you mad. And many of us who think they should have a higher standard than what they've shown thus far. But hey, let's talk about some of the good news here. And thank you to NES Addict, Mutation 666, Caleb Tresky, and Kyle Backman, all joining us here on the live chat. Fear not, Dan Kingerski will join me as well, our man in the arena from Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. He's currently participating in some of the post-game pressers. I was just checking over my shoulder at my studio television to see if we were catching any of that so far. Definitely going to be a less somber post-game for the de facto home team as the Penguins transition into the road team for 3 and 4. Not that it matters. It's been really different, hasn't it? But I think we saw some signs of the Penguins shaking off some rust here. Well, with the power play opportunities, I think we can probably say they need some more work there, but they'll have a day of practice and they'll be able to get right back to it. But even strength for 2 periods, at least, I felt like the Pens were clearly the superior team. And we were able to see both the Crosby line and the Malkin line make some moves and get into the O zone and enjoy some of that time pressing the Canadiens back and keeping them from kicking in that counterattack game. Third period was a different story. And if you follow hockey, you know that the team that's trailing by 1 or 2 goals going into the third is going to have a push. And Montreal may be the 12th seed, but they have a pulse. And for Claude Julien's side, they were better in the third. They were clogging up some of those passing lanes, I think making the Penguins panic a bit here. And, the Penguins got through a rough stretch early in that third period, I'll put it that way. And kudos to Matt Murray for that, because this was a real bounce-back performance for him. I think he showed some of that rust that I was speaking of, maybe most specifically in Game 1. There were a couple goals that got through him. There were some really juicy rebounds from Montreal they weren't able to take advantage of for the most part. Tonight, not so much of that. And in fact, he stole a couple from Tomas Tatar, one in the second period, one in the third period. And Murray in general, also a fine glove save. Those glove saves do catch our attention when they come from number 30, don't they? But a stop on Joel Armia and a nifty redirection. That might have been the Canadiens' best chance, but it stuck in that big left paw of Matt Murray's. And he went on to get within shouting distance of a shutout here. Jesperi Kotkaniemi popped in a rebound with about a couple of minutes left to raise all of our stress levels, to raise the stress levels in your living room, I'm sure, too, or wherever you may have been watching this one. We're also kind of cooped up, right? And so are the players in the bubble. So different kind of experience. I gather you're probably not at a watch party out there for a Penguins playoff game like we've seen, whether it be at the arena or, in someone's backyard, putting up a big projection screen. That's probably not going on very much this year. So we're all just staring at our devices. We're on social media, if you're like me. And tonight, I used the adjective at the top. Excruciating would be certainly one of them that would apply to this game because of how many looks the Penguins had, how many good opportunities the Penguins had, power play clicking or not. They probably should have been up 2 or 3-0 going into that third period, but they weren't. They had to grind it out. And if you're into the whole game about mental conditioning, we talk so much about physical conditioning coming back from the long break, but could the Penguins manage the game better? And I think they did at times, especially late in that third period. They started realizing Montreal was closing down the walls, and they started just softly tossing pucks out to the neutral zone. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it has worked for them in the past. Game 7 at Detroit in 2009, I seem to recall that. Also, though, the 2017 Cup run, one thing the Penguins did, they didn't break out the puck terrifically well in that Cup run, but they were able to realize when it was best to just fight another day and not try to make a crazy good pass at the blue line or hit one of the forwards in stride. And I think the forwards adapted to that. They started skating onto some loose pucks, and maybe that'll be the formula here if Montreal is able to close down some of those passing lanes like we saw tonight. But my primary takeaway, though, will remain the top line. Conor Sheary briefly demoted from that top line. I'm not sure if that was actually due to anything that Mike Sullivan saw, or he was trying to spread around some ice time with all the special teams. Remember that it's difficult on a coach to make sure everyone is still in the game. And we didn't see much of Patrick Marleau and Patrick Hornqvist away from special team situations, but we did see Hornqvist on the power play, the number 1 power play unit. And Patrick Marleau killed some penalties, and lest we forget, he also hit a post there in that third period. He could have made it 2-0 shortly before Jason Zucker did with his first Penguins playoff goal. If you're in the chat here, please feel free to lay your pluses and minuses on me. And as we're talking about the positives and the negatives from a Game 2 victory, 3-1 for the Penguins, Jake Guentzel with a couple of points, Conor Sheary with a couple of points, Sidney Crosby with the all-important first goal. And what a difference that makes, too. I know that it was a nervous game for you out there, but when you have the lead, you can play more the way you want to. And the Penguins were dictating for a long time. Montreal had a little bit of pushback, slight pushback in the second. And then the third, we saw the score effects take hold. And the Penguins had to use the cliche, weather that storm. And they did. So here we are, tied 1-1. It's a best-of-3 series now. And Montreal will have the last change in games 3, and now we're guaranteed a game 4. By the way, that game 4, if my memory serves, if my Apple Watch serves, that'll also fall on Sidney Crosby's 33rd birthday, 8/7/2020. And many out there have speculated he might have some big performance in mind for that one. Well, he had a big performance in reality here tonight. So series is tied up. We also have a couple of other series knotted up so far. We saw the Jets strike back this afternoon, and beat the Flames. So there might be a couple of sweeps here with Carolina on top of New York. And we saw Andrei Svechnikov get the first playoff hat trick in the history of the Hurricanes franchise earlier this afternoon. And, well, it looks like Connor McDavid is hell-bent on knotting that series with the Chicago Blackhawks. I believe he has points on all 6 Oilers goals so far in the playoffs, and he had 2 in the first period last I checked. But the Penguins have made it certain that the 5 seed in the East, the highest seed in the East that's playing one of these best-of-5 advancement qualification series, whatever you want to call them, the return of the best-of-5 to the NHL after 30-plus years. The Penguins will not be swept, and could argue they're back in position here because I would say they were the better team in Game 1. If you look at expected goals numbers, which I like to, this via Evolving Hockey, which is a great site if you are into the advanced numbers, the Penguins actually earned nearly 4 expected goals tonight, as opposed to the 1.66 earned by Montreal. Sounds about right. I think maybe a little bit underrating Montreal's danger of chances. They didn't have the quality, certainly, but they definitely had they didn't have the quantity, but they had the quality when they did get the quantity. And I'm thinking about Joel Armia. I'm thinking about Tomas Tatar. Because, yeah, total shots on goal, it's not going to be the gaudiest night of the year by any stretch for Matt Murray. Just 26 saves, and had that goal go in on him at the end that allowed things to get a bit dicey for the Pens, but they survived. And, well, I'm just curious your thoughts, actually, on what we saw here this evening. So let's go to the chat room. And Derek Stewart says, a plus was Murray's positioning and not being so deep in the crease. Minus was still not enough traffic in front of Price 5-on-5. Yeah, 5-on-5 traffic, I guess it was a lot of one and done for both teams, to be honest. Maybe a little more congestion in the Penguins crease as opposed to Montreal. But it hasn't been the sharpest series in terms of sustained offensive zone pressure. And I think you can look at that 4-month, whatever the layoff was for both of these teams. We're still seeing these players get their sharpness back. And I believe that's being manifest more on the offensive side of the puck than it has been on the defensive side. So in my view, even though we've seen a couple of high-scoring games so far and we've seen some ragged defensive play, I still feel like the star players, the top offensive players, are going to be more of a slow burn here. The elite hand-eye coordination might take a few more game reps to get back under control. NES Addict says, I honestly didn't get to see the game. I appreciate the honesty there. But what I noticed is Gino wasn't on the score sheet. How did he do? Well, I would say that for Malkin tonight, a much quieter game. He had 8 shots, not all of them on goal in Game 1, but he had 8 shots total. Tonight, more of an inconsistent performance. I would put some of that on his line mates, though, because I didn't think Jason Zucker or Brian Rust had the best game in transition, helping get Malkin the puck where he needs it to be dangerous on the rush. Malkin did fine on the power play in terms of getting them in the offensive zone, but wasn't peppering the goal like he was in Game 1. So this was more of a one-line show, honestly, tonight for the Pens. Very effective from the top unit, Crosby, Guentzel, Sheary, not just in points, but also in chance creation. So give those 3 gentlemen gold stars. And the defense was quieter, too, tonight. I think we saw everyone playing within themselves for the most part. I guess I'll put it that way. I will admit, and I tweeted this during the game, that watching the Columbus Blue Jackets last night and their upset win in Game 1 against Toronto, I found myself being a little bit envious because I think the Penguins can get more from their blue liners, but I'm not sure they have the horses either. Marcus Pettersson was struggling mightily with the puck tonight. I think John Marino and JJP 0411 chimes in now. Marino has had a really nice series. He's been their most solid defenseman, you could argue, all year, let alone in the first 2 games, his first 2 playoff games as a professional, as at least an NHL level player. So another tap of the stick to John Marino. He's my number 1 star on the Penguins blue line for the evening. Haven't seen a lot from Chris Letang. I'm not sure if he's just taking it easy in terms of rushing the puck. He's playing a little more conservatively. Maybe he feels like against a team like Montreal, the Penguins have enough of an edge and he doesn't have to push the issue. So be tough to get inside his head on that one. A guy who can be erratic, who can leave his teammates out to dry if he's trying a little too hard. So I suppose if Chris Letang isn't feeling like he's all the way back and ready to go in midseason form, and how could he be, I'm okay with him sitting back a bit. But yeah, Matt Murray, a bounce back game, and Conor Sheary, a bounce back game too. I feel for the guy because I think he takes more criticism than he should, because I think he's a good fit for that Crosby line. And no, he's not as good as Jake Guentzel. Very few are. And he's certainly not as good as Sidney Crosby, but he fits with the kind of the frantic pace that you want to see when Sid's out there, because I think Sid thrives off of the chaos, and all of his skill set is immense, obviously, but below the goal line, when there's a scramble on, when there's a situation where he might just be able to get that stick in there for a nifty little deflection. We saw him try that on the power play tonight. Didn't pan out, but he's got all those tricks in the bag, scoring from below the goal line the other night against Carey Price, of course. And tonight, a more conventional goal, surging down the slot, though, and popping that wrist shot in 5-hole against Carey Price. That set the tone. If anything set the tone, that set the tone, and it made it profoundly clear that this was not going to be like game one, when the Penguins fell behind and had to play Montreal's game. Yes, they tied it, and yes, the Penguins could have easily surged ahead in game one, but the formula for them will be allowing Montreal to bunker in and, to use the soccer term, to park that bus and not take very many chances. You saw in the third, when Montreal finally had to kick it into gear, that's when the Penguins got the look from Patrick Marleau. That's when the Conor Sheary to Jason Zucker goal happened. So obviously, we've all watched hockey long enough. We know that you have to start taking chances at a certain point. That's not rocket science or brain surgery by any means, but it is a good illustration of how key it is to get one behind. Looking now to my right, John Marino was one of the Penguins at the podium. That's where Dan Kingerski is right now, not in the room with the players, but conducting his Zoom call from outside the locker room, outside the bowels of Scotiabank Arena. I keep wanting to call it Air Canada Center. That's a tough habit to break. But Dan will be joining us shortly here on this edition of Pittsburgh Postgame, a victorious edition of Pittsburgh Postgame. I am Matt Gajtka. I'm a host here at Pittsburgh Sports Live. You might remember my work from Pittsburgh Hockey Now of a couple of years ago. We're about 17 minutes into the broadcast, so don't want to carry it on too deep into the night. These 8:15, 8:20 starts, they're a little more difficult than usual, aren't they? But I did notice that games 4 and 5, if necessary, would start at either noon or 1 o'clock. I believe I saw early afternoon starts there. So get ready for that, a sudden shift in scheduling. Although game 3, with Montreal serving as the quote-unquote home team, will be another 8:15, 8:20-ish start. The Penguins started on time, though, tonight, and that's what we're talking about here on Pittsburgh Postgame. I want to go over some of the turning points that I got in my notes and just go a little bit blow by blow here and see what you have to say about that. Again, we're looking for pluses and minuses. John Marino, a certain plus. Matt Murray's positioning, a plus. For me, I've raved about Conor Sheary's game tonight. I think that's a plus. Maybe a fire lit under him by that temporary demotion, if you want to call that, or at least not playing on Sid's line throughout the second period. I feel like I have given Brian Rust some short shrift here. He had 2 incredible chances to make it 2-0 at the end of the second period. So, hey, that's why I take notes. It's a fast game, and you definitely want to make sure you don't get anything lost in the rear view here, because you know how it goes, especially in the playoffs with as high leverage of a game as we're talking about here. It's easy to lose track of some of these little details. But first period, I think the Penguins' best period of the series out of the 7, if you count the overtime the other night. Nothing for Montreal at even strength. I can't recall one half-decent chance that the Canadiens got. And I think a lot of times we talk about shutting down an opponent, but really that was about the Penguins having the puck. And it was a similar start to how the Penguins started the other night in game 1 on Saturday. But this time they got the goal, and also they maintained that pressure throughout. It was very encouraging, I think, for people like me who believe the Penguins to be the clearly superior team in this series. Excuse me, especially with Jake Guentzel back. And just watching a few plays that Jake made, and Dan and I talked about this the other night too. Jake's the reason why I think the Penguins have a chance to go deep. Without Jake Guentzel, suddenly the Penguins are scrapping for top 6 wingers. And it's more of, well, the Stars have to do it. Crosby and Malkin go out there and get it done. Now, at least Sid has a good running mate, and we'll see what happens with Malkin alongside Zucker and Rust. Like I said, Rust did have a couple of good looks, but more taking advantage of Montreal mistakes. Okay, we got to talk about that power play because it's definitely in the minus category, even though I thought the process was better tonight. No doubt the Penguins got more chances on the power play. this evening than they did in game one, but it still wasn't sharp once they got into the offensive zone. They're still settling for long distance shots. I know they were trying to get that net front traffic, and maybe they were a little too eager to bomb away from the outside tonight, but not really finding the soft spots, not getting into that middle of the Montreal penalty kill. And Montreal's done a good job of taking that away too, to their credit. So I don't want to take too much away from that. There are two teams on the ice, as we all know, but we know the Penguins can do better too. And I wonder about personnel. I wonder what's going on in the coaching room there with Mark Recchi running the power play. You saw Mike Sullivan during that timeout prior to the 5-on-3 near the end of the second period. He was getting in there too and offering his input. So, he's got to be frustrated too with the lack of production there. And that 5-on-3 was it was looking okay. It was looking pretty promising at the start until Chris Letang fanned on the one-timer, and then they just couldn't get set up after that. So a minus the power play production, and in fact, the back end of that game on the power play, the Penguins definitely fell off. And well, I think I mentioned the 2005-06 season, how there were so many power plays that year, and how some of these playoff games so far this summer have had that similar feel. I remember from that year, thinking back 15 seasons now, it has been a while, but one thing I remember was teams got a lot of chances, and yeah, plenty of power play goals went in that season. But if a team like the Penguins did that year struggled on the power play, and they got 0 for 4, 0 for 5, you could tell that they started to get more tentative. I know me watching as a fan, you didn't want the power play. There's always the joke you want to decline the penalty like it's football, but sometimes it does become a reality, especially when you have all these opportunities piling up. But how about a positive? How about a plus for me? The Penguins penalty kill. Montreal, a goose egg for the series so far. Not that we feared the Montreal power play necessarily, but certainly great effort, great execution, more importantly, from the Penguins on their PK. I know on the AT&T Sportsnet broadcast, Bob Airy and Steve Mears noted the pressure put on by the Penguins PKers. I mentioned Patrick Marleau. He's got those fleet feet. Maybe he can be more of a contributor there, shorthanded. Teddy Bluger, love his game, face-offs, and of course, he's a quick water bug on the ice too. So you often think about defensemen when you think about penalty killing, but not the way the Penguins are doing it, not the way they're putting pressure on. And everyone wants to put pressure on, but the Pens are being more successful at that than most. And they should be confident while they're killing penalties, to be frank, because they've had such success here in the playoffs. So special teams, not all bad. That's the way we'll put it, at least for right now. Other notes from the game. Matt Murray was moving well, and one of our commenters here tonight mentioned the positioning, and I think he looked a little more athletic in this game. Murray gets credit for being really good position-wise, but part of that is because, in my opinion, he's an underrated athlete. And back when I was covering a lot of games in person, that's the one thing that stood out to me about Murray that I didn't get on TV is he kind of looks unimpressive on TV. You know what I mean? He basically is a blocker, so to speak. Doesn't use his hands a lot. Not a great stick handler. Doesn't really flash out those pads too much, a la Marc-Andre Fleury, his notable predecessor. But you know what he does do is he gets to those spots really quickly and really subtly. So the guy's got strong legs, even though he looks as spindly as they come off the rink. But that's what impresses me the most about Matt Murray is he's able to get to those spots very quietly. And in a lot of ways, he's like his counterpart in this series in Carey Price, a guy who certainly can make it look really easy out there. And again, even when he's working up a sweat like he was tonight, it doesn't look like he's really trying that hard. Another Fleury comparison. He's like the opposite of Fleury in that way, in every way, just so quiet. I think that's why NHL players consistently rate him as one of the best, if not the best goalies in the league year after year after year, even as his results have gone downhill a bit. At least those numbers. I'm not sure about scoring chances against and how well Montreal is playing in front of him on a night-by-night basis. But Price's performance has dropped at least slightly, but he still looks every bit to me like the guy who is fully capable of completely shutting you down and making it look like he's back there having a cigarette and maybe a scotch in the crease. So the Penguins shouldn't be ashamed of their lack of offensive production so far in this series. 5 goals. They finally got to 3 goals for the first time in a while in a playoff game. So kudos to them for that, even though an offense of their caliber shouldn't really have that much trouble getting over the 3 or the 4 goal line. Then again, like I said, Carey Price. But Matt Murray matched him tonight, in my opinion, and that's a formula for victory if there ever was one for the Penguins, who certainly can outdo the Canadiens up front, at least, when it comes to depth. Maybe not on the blue line. That's where my next question comes in. This actually comes in via text from Larry Snyder. He wants to know any thought on everyone's favorite whipping boy, Jack Johnson. He had the least amount of minutes among the blue line crew. Larry's being a little bit facetious there, but I know Larry also understands that Jack's a pretty limited player. And Larry was spot on here. Jack Johnson only played 12 minutes and 41 seconds. Are we finally seeing the realization that that Jack should be really limited here? He has looked just as slow as ever, in my opinion. And when he gets the puck in the defensive zone, it's just going to be a grenade for the most part out into the neutral zone if there's any kind of pressure. He's just not the type of guy who's going to get you out of the zone with possession, and certainly not going to get you into the offensive zone with possession. So I'm encouraged by that coaching move. You want to talk about pluses, limiting Jack Johnson's ice time is right up there. In fact, I would like to limit it to 0, maybe get a chance to see a Juuso Riikola in there. Not that I'd like to play him 20 minutes a night, but he can at least give you something at the offensive end, which alludes to my previous comment on how I'd like to see more from the Penguins blue liners. Maybe they don't have the horses. I think Brian Dumoulin is still warming to the task here. But John Marino's been solid. Chris Letang hasn't made any glaring errors, had a couple of shots on goal. 4 of them missed, though. He's really got to calibrate that shot. So make Chris Letang's aim a minus tonight. That's harming the power play, too, when he's out there. So let's not pin it all on the forwards as well, or pin it all on the coaching. Guys just aren't executing. We've seen a lot of shots off the glass so far in this series, more so in game 1 than game 2 for the Penguins. But still, if you're looking for great, perfectly played hockey, maybe the playoffs aren't for you anyway, but these playoffs, at least at the start, aren't going to be for you. And I alluded to the fact that I know these teams that are playing right now are envious of the teams that are doing the round robin, because they get maybe not the highest intensity games in the world. They're pretty much glorified preseason or exhibition, but at least they get 4 games. They get 1 preseason game plus the 3 round robins to try to dial things in, because right now it's about winning ugly. And the Penguins did do that. They did win. The most important part of winning ugly is that first word, winning. And the Penguins pulled it off 3-1. Crosby scores early, and that was almost all they needed. Jason Zucker gets his first Penguins playoff goal. And then Jake Guentzel hits the empty net to end the misery for Penguins fans who were sweating blood, I'm sure, in this one. Hoping to get caught up with Dan Kingerski, but it looks like Mike Sullivan is still there at the podium. So might be signing off here as we get past the 11:30 mark. I'm realistic. I know that viewership does drop down as we get closer to midnight. A couple more comments, though, before we wrap it up. Dave Gormley says 2-8. Oops, wrong game. Let's go, Pens. Oh, geez. Is he talking about the Pirates? I have no idea. Derek Stewart also says he thought Malkin had some good looks tonight also. He had a couple, but I wouldn't say he was as domineering as he was the other night. I thought he was pretty close to the best player on the ice in game 1. Typical Gino fashion, firing out of the gate and maybe not always in the right direction, but I was a big fan of 71's game in game 1. A little quieter in game 2. And, special teams does make it challenging, though. I think Malkin's the kind of guy who thrives off the consistency of shift after shift at even strength, and still trying to work his chemistry with his 2 line mates here. Crosby's more of a guy you can plug and play, and you have seen that from Mike Sullivan, where he'll give Sid the occasional shift with the 4th line. Not in this series so far, at least as far as I could tell, he hasn't done that. But Sid's definitely a guy who just needs one look, and he can make it happen, as we saw again tonight. So Crosby stays right up there in terms of all-time playoff scorers on a per-game basis. You saw the graphic tonight on AT&T Sportsnet, right there with Peter Forsberg, which is coincidental and fitting, really, because those of us who grew up watching Peter Forsberg, and I raised my hand, were immediately reminded of Forsberg when Crosby came into the league. So that fits. They're both at 1.18 per playoff game. And, of course, you're not going to catch Gretzky and Lemieux and Bossy. Those were different eras. I would certainly put Sid up there with anybody in NHL history in terms of his raw ability, but tougher to score these days, whether it's goaltending, better defensive structure, or just a general increase in the ability of everyone on the ice to skate. there really are not many bad skaters out there outside of Milan Lucic if you were watching the Flames today. Again, this is Matt Gajtka. This is Pittsburgh Postgame. Hoping to catch up with Dan Kingerski, maybe if he can join us. But if not, we will just look ahead to Wednesday night when it'll be myself again anchoring Pittsburgh Postgame. Thank you to all of you for your input here on the chat. We love it. Derek Stewart now has something to say about the Gallagher-Sid scrap. I think it's humorous because Sid typically doesn't punch down on too many guys. He's about 5'11", maybe 5'10", but Gallagher would be a guy that presents a different type of challenge, I would say, for Sid in terms of getting away from him. We've seen Max Domi as well get into it, and we've seen the Canadiens as a group really try to fluster Sid. And this is not the Sidney Crosby of 2000, whatever you want to say, 2005 or even 2012 or 13. Much more mature guy at these moments, and he just doesn't. He pushes back a little bit, but he doesn't go over the edge. He doesn't let it get him flustered. Something changed in Sid. I think when Mike Sullivan took over, we saw that change, and whether that be coincidental or not, I'm not sure. But Sid just seems to be of the belief that he can go out there and just play, as we've heard Sully talk about over and over again, and it'll be more than enough. And obviously, that's an astute observation from him if he's thinking that way, because he's one of the best of all time. So I don't think Sid let it bother him too much. I like to see him defending himself a little bit, but not over the edge as well. So just enough pushback there from Sid to let Brendan Gallagher know that he's not going to get away with just continuing to hack and whack and get gloves up in his face. Benjamin Anastasi asks if we could even see Chad Ruedel for Game 3. Yeah, I keep forgetting about Chad, and he's such a unassuming type of player, isn't he? And if you ever get a chance to talk to him off the ice, he's just as unassuming off the ice as he is on the ice. The thing I worry about with Chad is sometimes defensive coverage is not a strong suit, but then I look at this Montreal team, not excessively big, not a team that's really going to get you on extended zone time in the O-zone. So maybe it is a good match for a Chad Ruedel as opposed to a UC Ricola, who might get caught up ice, might be a little too aggressive and allow that Montreal counterattack to get in the game. Because as far as I can tell, Montreal's skill set on the attack is about the counterattack. They want to shut you down in the neutral zone and go the other way. So anything the Penguins can do to mitigate that is a good idea. So maybe Ruedel, who definitely does move the puck better than Jack Johnson, would be a better fit. I think he'd be a better fit, even if you have to shuffle some guys around, because Ruedel is a righty as opposed to a lefty. Caleb Tresky, he chimes in. Murray has been playing really well, he says, for us in the series so far. I think that was passable in Game 1. I'd give him about a C. Tonight, I give him an A. Our defense has been good. Our PK has been excellent. We just have to improve on the power play. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? The PP, especially the PP1, as they call it, the first unit, is not producing what the Penguins need to see, and just not enough ideas, it feels like. And that's where I keep coming back to coaching, is the lack of ideas, it appears here, as Mike Sullivan wraps up his press conference from Scotiabank. I wonder what he's thinking, because if there's one tinker to make, it's something on the power play, maybe even beyond a tinker. A big-time adjustment might be needed, even though the Penguins got the win tonight, but they still need 2 more. They still got to win 2 out of 3, so let's not get carried away and think too highly of the squad right now. They grinded out the result tonight, and at this stage of the playoffs especially, I think that's the most important thing. So we'll look ahead to game number 3. Again, that's Wednesday night, another 8 o'clock start. I believe that's on AT&T Sports locally, NBC Sports nationally. My Florida Life, latecomer to the chat, he wants to know, why are we so stubborn? Just move Sid. Yeah, I don't know why Sid, if it's his deal that he doesn't want to be below the goal line or on that right side more often than not. I feel like he's best below the goal line or right around the goal. And he drifts there, but he's not there all the time. So positional flexibility is important on the power play, but I think also a plan is important on the power play. And it's my belief the Penguins have gotten away from that plan a little too much in the post-Phil Kessel era. And who would have thought when they acquired Phil Kessel, we'd be talking about his playmaking, but that's what he was in Pittsburgh. He was much more of a playmaker than a sniper. All right, that's my final observation for the night. I'm going to sign off and say, hope you had a good night. If you're a Penguins fan, you did at the end of it, even after chewing your nails to oblivion and possibly standing up for the entire third period. Penguins win it. They tie the series one game apiece, and they'll be back at it at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto in 2 days' time. We'll be back at it. Myself and hopefully Dan Kingerski will be able to join me next time around for another edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And a reminder, smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'll get you those notifications, and you'll be able to be on top of all the content we have. Penguins, obviously, right now. We are still covering the Pirates, even though they dropped to 2-8 tonight in extra innings at Minnesota. Pittsburgh Riverhounds. Also, before you know it, the Steelers will certainly be back at it, I think, if the NFL can get their return to play situation worked out. I'm just happy hockey's back. It's been great to chat about it with you, and thank you so much for your input. Good night, God bless, and talk to you again on Pittsburgh Postgame.